talking with Jane and Mark Hewitson about a faith-building life experience they had. Tell me about it. Mark, you got sick.
Yeah, I got the flu. It just kept getting worse, and that's about the last thing I remember. I'm in real estate, so I was still helping folks, buy and sell houses and working with them, but I got to a point, I think it was a Saturday, where I just couldn't get out of bed. So then apparently, from what Jane tells me, that I was passing out in the bathroom, which I don't remember any of that. And then we decided to call the 911.
He had gotten sick on a Saturday, and I came down with the flu on Wednesday. And then by Saturday, I was starting to feel a little bit better, but he was clearly getting worse, and he'd had it for a whole week at that point. A typical guy, he's like, no, it's nothing, and wouldn't. But by Saturday afternoon, he said to me, I think I need to call an ambulance. He called me from the hospital to say, you better come because they're putting me into ICU. They're saying it's like my body is shutting down. So I went in, even though I was feeling just miserable. He went up to ICU. Our son, Joshua, came, and we went up with him. They had put him on I think it's called a BPAP machine, which is like a CPAP, only more industrial, I guess, or whatever, that was helping him breathe. But he was like pulling off the mask and joking with us and stuff. So I was like, okay, I think he's going to be fine. He just needs a little help with the breathing. So I said, look, I'm going home. I'm going to bed because I'm feeling terrible. And Joshua stayed for a little longer, and then he left because he seemed to be okay. But then I got a call in the middle of the night saying that they'd had to put him on a ventilator because he was not doing well on the BPAP machine. So that was kind of concerning. And then I got a call a little bit later saying they were going to helicopter him to a teaching hospital in Baltimore. So that's when I knew, okay, this is really serious. He's not just going to get better quickly. We had to wait a long time before we talked to a doctor, but a doctor finally came out early Sunday morning and talked to us. He said, we are basically doing everything we can do for him. There's nothing more we can do. If he gets any worse, he won't make it. So that's what Sunday was. It was just waiting and praying to see what would happen. And he did make it through the day and started to improve ever so slightly. But his lungs had shut down, his heart was not working properly, his kidneys had shut down, just pretty much every system in his body had shut down, and he was, living because of machines, basically, at that point. For the first week, it was really sort of is he going to make it kind of a situation. And then he gradually started to get better, and things kind of settled down a little bit, and so we began to realize, okay, it looks like he's going to survive this. But that was kind of where I hit the wall, because I had always sort of thought in the back of my mind that, okay, the one situation God will never put me in is where my husband is disabled, because I don't know how I would deal with that. It would just be more than I could handle. And so then here I was facing a situation where it was clearly going to be a very long recovery and no guarantee that it was going to be a full recovery. And so I was really worried. I was very anxious about the whole situation. I remember I got down on my knees in my bedroom, and I felt like Hezekiah laying out that letter in front of God in the temple. I said, God, this is the situation. This is way beyond anything I can fix. I'm kind of a fixer. Like if there's a problem, I feel like I need to fix it. And this was a situation I couldn't fix. And I said, I think you've put me in this position for a reason. I think you want me to learn that I can't fix everything, that I have to trust in you. And so I'm giving this problem to you. I'm handing it to you right now. And I'm going to let you take care of it for me. And that was such a turning point for me, because I had such peace after that. There was certainly a lot of struggles over the next several weeks. Mark was in ICU for 5 weeks. He was in the hospital for 7, and then in a rehabilitation center for another week. And it seemed like for every 2 steps forward, there was a step back over and over again. There were a lot of times when we thought he was doing fine, and then all of a sudden, oh, this could really go south really quickly. All through that, I just trusted God completely. I was like, I know there's no guarantee that he's going to survive this or that he's going to recover fully, but I'm not worried anymore because I know you're in charge. You're taking care of this. And I could see things falling into place that made me see his hand too. I had 4 kids living at home. 3 of them were still in high school, but they all just, stepped up and took care of themselves and stuff. My job, I work as a speech pathologist in the public schools. It's not easy for me to take time off during the school year because I have to make up all the sessions that I miss. And I was very panicky about that. Work really stepped up. They provided subs for me, which they don't usually provide subs for speech pathologists, but they did. As I look back, as I look over the setbacks that we had as he was in the hospital, I see how it all kind of evolved into this situation that was the most favorable outcome in the end, which when you're going through it, you don't see it. But when you look back at it, you see, it was perfect. It was God's perfect timing. He knew how long Mark needed to be there and the kinds of setbacks that he needed to have to get him to the point where he would recover. It was a long haul. When he came home, he could barely walk. His goal was to be able to walk his daughter down the aisle in June. He got out of the hospital first week of May. He wanted to be able to walk his daughter down the aisle at the end of June, without his cane. And he did it. So because he was under such heavy sedation, he wasn't moving for weeks. And we don't always realize that, but when you don't use your body, it atrophies really quickly. So it took him months to get back. And he still has some residual physical effects from it. But it took him months to get back to the point where he could walk independently and go up and down stairs and do all that. So it was a very long recovery. The other side of it is financially, I was very worried at first, when it first happened, how I was going to pay the bills.
She sold my car.
Yes, I sold his car. I was in panic mode to start with, and I was like, we have to sell his car. We have to sell his car. We need to make the car payments on the other car, so we got to sell his car. So I sold his car. This was before I laid the problem out before God. We're very dependent on his income to pay our bills, and I was like, how am I going to do this? As a realtor, when he's not working, there's no income. He lost some deals as a result of
7 deals
getting sick. I was very worried about that. But when I gave that problem to God, I said, I'm not going to ask for help, for financial help. You're going to take care of it. I know you are. And he did. We got financial help without asking for it. It came. And it even came to the point where I had sort of thought, well, this is probably what I need before he'll be back on his feet. And that's exactly what we got, So he really, he enabled us to manage in that respect too. So it was amazing. And the support of the Brotherhood was phenomenal. We got so many cards, Facebook messages. I got a card from people in England who said, you don't know us, but we're praying for you and your husband. We heard about your situation. We're praying, and heard from people all over the world, and really amazing the amount of support that we had.
It took probably a full year before I felt like I was mentally normal again. It was weird because she kept telling me we've got a couple months before the wedding. We were talking about it. But the months were jumbled up. I didn't understand months, and I couldn't figure out that June comes here in January. So everything was jumbled. It took quite a while. But I do remember the first thing that she said to me was, we sold your car, which not a really big deal, but it was like, wow, I must have been really out because I had no real comprehension of the time or anything.
I can't say whether that was something that was sent by God, but God used that experience in a way that changed my life, changed my husband's life. For me, it was just such a faith-building experience. It really was. Honestly, before this happened, there were difficulties. We were having some troubles. And I feel like since that's happened, like Mark was not taking care of his health before. it was a wake-up call to him that he's not immortal. And he's taken so much better care of his health since that happened. So, people come to me now that I haven't seen in a long time, and they'll say to me, oh, that was such a terrible experience you went through. And I'm thinking, yeah, it was, but actually it was probably the best experience of my life because of the results from it and what I learned from it. The Bible says, trials come into our life to teach us things, and we can learn and grow from them. And if we allow that to happen, they can be some of the best experiences that we go through.
The reality is, I brought it on myself. I mean, that's the reality. I don't think it was God that brought it on. I could have taken better care of myself, watched what I put in my body, taken, better exercises. So it was, my own doing to get there, and fortunate that I made it through.
Even though I was always a believer, there was a part of me that held back from truly trusting God completely. And I really believe God put me in this situation to where I was in a position where I couldn't fix it. It was so beyond what I could manage. I was just overwhelmed by it. And I had no choice. I could sit there and be totally overwhelmed and miserable, or I could take that step of faith. And I knew I really needed to take that step of faith. I knew that was something that was lacking in my life. And so that's, I think, what drove me to just do it. Because I had literally said to God previously in my life, you will never do this to me, will you? You'll never put me in that position, because I know I couldn't manage that. And he did. And I kind of almost laughed with God on that. I kind of you did this. You did this on purpose. And so, I knew I had to. I had no choice. I had to give it to him. And boy, he took care of it when I did.
So what was that feeling again when you turned it over and gave it to him? Did you feel anything physically?
I just had such a peace that came over me. Because when you're anxious, you got that churning stomach and things like that. And, I envision, I'm a very visual person. So when I pray, I usually picture myself in the Holy of Holies, looking at the ark in order to really feel the presence of God. And so I just pictured myself being there and taking my problems in the form of a letter and laying them out like Hezekiah did and saying, here, it's yours. You have to take it because I can't. And that visualization piece just brought such a peace to me when I did that. I have always been a believer. I was raised in a Christadelphian home. I was baptized when I was 15. I've always believed there's a God. I've always believed that he has a purpose, that I'm a part of that purpose. So I would say I've had pretty much rock solid belief all through my life. But there was always a part of me that didn't quite trust God 100%. That's what has changed for me now. I just trust him completely now. And I even now look back through my life and I'm like, oh, he was there. He was there. He was there. I see him now. And like we talked earlier today, I see him in everything now. And, some people might say, well, that's easy for you to say because you got your husband back. He's all healthy. Everything's good. But even when I was going through it and there was no guarantee that he was going to recover completely, I was still at peace because I thought, God's in control here. I can trust him, and I'm not worried about what happens. If my husband is permanently disabled, it's okay because God's going to take care of it. He's going to make it work. He makes all things work together for good. I really, really believe that now, where I think before there was a part of me that felt like, no, I have to take care of things. Which is not to say that I can just sit back and do nothing. We all have to work things out and do what we can to accomplish the things that need to be accomplished. But I'm not anxious about it anymore. I'm at peace with it. So to me, that's what faith is. It's having that peace, knowing that God's in control and that no matter what happens, it's okay. It'll be good. In the end, it'll be good.
Let me play devil's advocate. You may not have an answer for this.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, it worked out good for you. But there are plenty of people out there who would listen to this and go, didn't work out so well for me. So what's the answer for that?
Well, I feel like I kind of have already addressed that in the sense that, for me, yes, things turned out really well. But even as I was walking through that, I knew that was a good possibility that it wouldn't. I did my research on this. What he had was acute respiratory distress syndrome. So I looked that up on the internet, and it was not a pretty picture. People are often permanently disabled by that. So I knew that was a possibility, but I knew that God would be with us through it all. So, there are people who go through a situation that doesn't turn out well. They lose a loved one, or their loved one doesn't recover the way they'd like. But faith is knowing that no matter what that outcome of that trial is, God is walking you through it, and He will continue to walk you through it as long as you hold on to His hand. Like I said, He gave me such a peace. Anybody can have that peace if they just hold it. You got to cling to God, through everything. And sadly, we have people in our own family who have turned away from God as a result of trial. But to me, my thought is, if you turn away from God, you have nothing. You don't have the peace. You don't have the hope. You have nothing. If you cling to God, He will, in the ultimate long run, He will make it all work together for good. Maybe not immediately, maybe not 5 years from now, but ultimately He will. And He will help you walk through that trial. So, that's where my faith comes in. I just feel like you just have to trust God. You just have to hold on to Him, because He's going to be the one that's going to help you through it and make it work out well. It's not going to work out better if you turn your back on God. It's definitely not going to work out better.
Based on what you just said, let me see if this is what you're saying. You're not saying, oh, because I got to this point where I gave it to God, He cured Mark.
No.
Because really what you're talking about is a higher level, really. It's not I asked God and He answered my prayer. It's whatever was going to happen. You had reached a level.
It's not a results,
understanding. It's a
based.
change in your thinking
Yeah.
and how you look at life.
When I prayed to God, when I gave this problem to God, it wasn't my expectation that meant He was going to fix everything and make it good. At that point, there was a good possibility we would lose our home if I couldn't make the mortgage payments. There's a good possibility that Mark wouldn't recover, or would, not recover fully. So it wasn't sort of like, okay, God, I'm trusting you to make this all go away and fix it all. It's not about believing that God can fix it all. It's about believing that God will walk with you through it and will guide you and will help you and encourage you and ultimately make things work for good, which doesn't mean you get what you want out of it. Doesn't mean everything's going to turn out the way you want. But, I prayed that. I said, God, I know this might not turn out the way I want, but all I want is for you to be there, for you to be guiding my footsteps and guiding what happens and work things out in your time and in your way. And I'm trusting you to do that completely. So I firmly believe that had things not turned out well, had Mark remained disabled or had we gone through other trials, I had reached the point where I just trusted God so much. And I feel that way now, that I trust God so much that whatever happens, I know He's in my corner. I know He's working it out for me.
What did you learn about faith?
That's an interesting question, because really, I've been self-employed since 1984. And I learned a long, long time ago that I can't control anything, that, God's in control.
I should share, He, all through our marriage, he's the kind of guy that just will take that leap of faith. And he was always, you got to trust God more. You got to trust God more. And I was always just resistant to that.
So yeah, for me, it's been an ongoing lesson. I think what I really came away from with all of this is just how fragile life is. And you take so much for granted. Even losing my parents, even losing some friends, it's never going to happen to me until it happens to you. And then, so time is short. Try to make the best of it with what we can.
But yeah, I think ultimately, if you go through a trial, eventually, if you look with the eyes of faith, you see That's why that happened. Now I get it, even though you might not understand it at the time.
And I think you have to go through experiences to be able to help others down the road, and you share with them and encourage them and be there to talk to them as they're going through things. We'd like to think we could go through life unscathed and not have trials, but actually trials are probably a good thing.
If it was all fixed now, where would be our yearning for Christ's return, It's like we yearn for his return because we need it so badly. We have an incredible God. We have a God who cares intimately about us. And I used to sort of have this feeling like, well, he cares about the big things, but the little things, not so much. But I see now the evidence. He cares about everything, every single thing. And we can turn to him in every circumstance. And I guess that's what I feel like I would encourage people to think about in terms of their faith, is that this is a God who loves you and wants the best for you and will do anything for you. You just have to trust him. It might not be the thing that you want, because that might not be ultimately be the best thing for you, but he really, really cares about you, even in little intimate things. That's something I wish everybody could understand.